Thank you for joining us. You're listening to the Write Project podcast and radio program. This is a show about writing and modern Newfoundland author culture. This program is produced and recorded at CHMR FM 93.5 FM in St. John's, Newfoundland and Labrador, and is aired on other great stations in the province and elsewhere in the country. It can also be heard online at www.chmr.ca. I'm your host, Matthew LeDrew, author of such novels as Touch Your Nose and Jacoby Street, and founder of Engine Books. Let's see what we have today.
Hello, and welcome once again to the Write Project podcast. It's a very special episode today. I know we say that they are all special, but this one really is. On the line with us, we have Ida Linehan Young. She is the author of the award-winning Mary Roe series. The started with Being Mary Roe, and then on to The Promise, and on to The Liars, and then I might have done the wrong order there, and then specifically to the newest book, The Stolen Ones, which I've had the pleasure of reading and is just lovely. It's an amazing cap to the series that I hope she continues, but she seems to think she's not. But we've got Ida on the line here now to talk about the book. Thank you for joining us, Ida.
Oh, you're very welcome. Thank you for having me.
No worries. Okay, I've read The Stolen Ones in a couple different iterations there, but pretend I haven't. Tell me about this book.
Well, The Stolen Ones is a past and present, I guess you could say, narrative that's set in Newfoundland, on the island of Newfoundland, and it's the last book it is the last book in my series, which you mentioned at the beginning. So it's really the story of Peter Nolan and his wife Mary, and we met Mary in Being Mary Roe. So he never really had a story. So I wanted to give him something because I actually did a questionnaire online. I said, who would you like me to kill? And everybody was like, kill Peter, or kill nobody. So I figured, well, I had to give Peter a story. So it talks about, he's a doctor back in the late 1800s, and the love of his life was Mary. And so they end up getting married, and the two of them are doctors. So they go around to the little communities on a boat and they do their doctoring. So fast forward 100 years later, there is a lady in Boston that loses her mom, and her mom had been investigating her DNA because she was an orphan. So she found out that she was linked to this Peter and Mary Nolan some 100 years before, but they didn't know how. So COVID hits and the mom dies. So Darlene is left kind of wanting to carry on her mother's legacy, but really stumbling around in life in a pandemic and doesn't know where to go or what to do. And the only thing she feels she can do for her mom is to continue the legacy and look for the reason why they're related and why they're in Boston and things like that. And as they go along, it's kind of Darlene's coming to fruition as a person and as a finding family and her change. And it also talks about Peter and Mary and their story, and it actually takes some examples of things that happened in the late 1800s in Newfoundland. And I weave Mary and Peter's story through these things just to bring the reader, some more historical facts about Newfoundland and Labrador.
Yeah, no, I like the double narrative there. So I would call this a generational story, more on the kind of lines of the work of Bernice Morgan there, because it's instead of being set all in one setting like the previous three books, this one's almost set in our time, looking back on the era of Being Mary Roe and their ascendants. I can't remember which one's which, but yeah. So it's an interesting narrative, and it allows us to jump back and forth in time in the Being Mary Roe era, in the 1800s era, because there The people in the present time are collecting the story based on notes and researching their family history and all of that sort of thing, which is really interesting and kind of plays with. I mean, in some ways, the characters in the modern setting are us a little bit. You know what I mean? They've just gone through
Yes.
COVID. They're looking back. They're reading about Mary Roe. They're very much like point of view characters. This is a weird Avengers Endgame kind of novel where it's like this is the end of the Mary Roe cinematic universe where we're jumping all around in time and you're showing scenes you didn't show before in the other novels, and it's an interesting concept. I've never seen this done before with historical fiction. It's cool.
Well, some readers, when I started being Mary Roe, when that was published, a lot of readers were like, "Oh, that was my grandparents." Like it felt like my family. I was reading my history, sort of thing. So then I continued on with it, but then I wanted, like I said, to bring it to an end, because Peter didn't have a story. That was the only piece that was kind of missing for me. So I wanted to make sure that I included his story in there, so people actually didn't want to kill him. So I wanted them to really like all the characters. So because of that, I gave Peter a story.
So that sounds like you were really just that online poll. You were just really trolling your readers, and it's like, who should I kill? Peter? Okay, well, I'm not going to, but I'm going to make him the focus of it. And it's like, what? That's the opposite of what we told you to do.
But I wanted to see who was the least cared about in the series, kind of thing. Now I have to say I had like 600 respondents and about 400 said don't kill any, and it was really like maybe 200 that said, well, if somebody has to go, kill Peter.
Gotcha. No, that's wonderful. So I want to talk about the series as a whole. You just won an IPPY award for the series as a whole. Did you not? You won.
Yes, a silver medal. So
yep.
I believe it's an international. I don't believe. I know it's an international medal.
Yep.
For a series, and as a silver medalist, like I think I'm still in awe. That I've actually won this.
You should be, but like it's kind of a weird thing on their part. I was saying to you when you've won it, it was very much like they've awarded a series that's not done yet. I mean, you can say it's done all you want, but like, what if in the next novel, what if there's a fifth novel and it follows the characters in the present timeline investigating a murder, and it turns out all the people on the IPPY committee are murderers, and that's what they discover. You know what I mean? And then they'll have award, because if you award a series, if the series continues, that still carries the medal. That'd be interesting.
Yeah, and I don't know. I have to ask that question. I think I can. Like I didn't send an email to ask the question, but I can to see if like by proxy, the Stolen Ones is also an award winner, because it could very well be.
Yeah. I'm not sure how that works, but I mean, like if you're awarding a series, like you're not awarding each book in the series, you're awarding the series. So I'd treat it like that, but it might be good to
like
ask.
Say if the Toronto Blue Jays won the World Series, well, everybody on that team in that time won this World Series, but next year, if there's new team members, they didn't win. You know what I mean?
Yes, but however, if you're at the Oscars and they give you an actor who's been around a long time, like the Lifetime Achievement Award, that's for their whole life, even though it's not over yet. You know what I mean?
Yes. Yeah.
Like I think Bill Cosby's won the Lifetime Achievement Award a couple times. I'm like, I think they'd rather he didn't do that now.
But they probably took it back.
Yeah, one would hope. Yeah. It's like, you led a great life. No. Horrible. So yeah, the Stolen Ones is an amazing book. I've read that, and I've read I think The Promise. I read them in a just horrible order, but they're very readable even in that order. They're not. You don't need to have read them all, but I'm very sure that it helps.
Yes, it does help. So it helps to read them in the order that they were published.
Yeah.
However, for the Stolen Ones, I think if you read Being Mary Roe, it would be nice, because you'd know about Peter and Mary and what happened to them. Although I do kind of in a couple of chapters summarize being Mary Roe a
Yeah.
little bit, but it is nice to have read the story.
Well, you're allowed you've got a great plot device where you can kind of summarize, because the two characters in the present timeline are learning about Mary Roe, so they've
Through a
essentially
series of journals, yes. So
Yeah,
they're
so-
reading the journals about them.
they've essentially read a synopsis of being Mary Roe themselves to catch them up, so that they
Yes.
know everything that we know. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, no, that's wonderful. That works. It works really well. It's a great narrative, and the like tying together and making it all about family and stuff like that, and finding your family, and because these are American descendants, I believe, that actually come to Newfoundland and kind of discover our culture and discover their lost culture and stuff like that. If I'm not mistaken, you're giving me a look.
Yes, and it's the Boston connection that's typical to most of Newfoundland, right? In that time period.
I was unfamiliar with that. I'm not tight with my extended family in that way, but now that you mention it, I do have some relatives that are down in Boston, and I'm like, oh, I wonder if I thought that was just something that happened to me, but apparently that's something.
No,
that occurred.
it was a normal. I think any family that researches their history will find out that it's kind of a normal thing. And through my books, I've actually found relatives that we had no connection with and didn't really know existed. And I found them since, and it's all through a Boston connection.
Oh wow! Okay. Well, congratulations. I saw online the book very quickly, very quickly went back for a second printing.
Yes, and I had a signing in at Chapters on the weekend, and the guy that was there said it quickly went to top 10 in the store. It wasn't like over time. It was like immediate. The first week it came out, it was a top 10 in the store.
Yeah.
So that's, it's doing a lot better than The Liars, because when The Liars come out, of course, it was the beginning of the pandemic and bookstores weren't even open at the time. So
you almost got to take that as a mulligan. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. Which is too bad, because it's a good book.
Oh, it certainly is, and it'll still be there. Like it'll stand the test of time just over the course. But that whole first year of the pandemic, it's again, like I said, mulligan. You know what I mean?
And it was my choice. I didn't have to release it, but I didn't want to hold on to it, because it wasn't something that I guess it was pandemic and readers were still wanting to read. So to me, it was, it was kind of like a gift. Not that I'm not that I'm trying. That doesn't sound humble, but it was more like for readers' sake, because books are meant to be read, not to be held on to.
Yeah, no, and we did something like that over at my spot too. We did a book of short stories that we released for free online and stuff like that, just because it was like, all right, well, people are stuck inside. Let's keep people reading. You know what I mean?
Yes.
Which is just as much, like you said, that's not to be like magnanimous or something. That's just as much for because there's lots of stuff. It's far easier just to turn on Netflix and put it on autoplay for the next year. Like it's in our benefit to encourage people to be like, hey, while you're stuck inside,
do you want to read a book?
Reading. Yeah.
So it didn't do horrible. Like, I can't say that it did horrible, but it didn't do as well as I think the book deserves. But the book now has time to catch up.
Yeah.
Which is a good thing.
Yeah, and I'm sure eventually, they'll be get all four at once or something like that. You know what I mean? Like a little little pack, and it'll do just fine there. I wouldn't worry. Ida, what are common traits for aspiring authors in your mind?
I think for me in particular, when I started reading or writing in the beginning, like the historical part of my writing, it was not doing enough research. So small little things that I had in the book in the beginning were not historically accurate.
Okay.
So so that's some of the things. Now, to some people that might not matter, but I'm very analytical and I'm very technical. So I like to have those things right. And sometimes it's not easy to find. So like when in a descriptive way, I guess, uh, I have to be careful when I'm describing, because I have to be describing something that is accurate to the time.
Sure.
But I think something that people fail to understand when you're writing is that you're going to get a lot of no's, and there's going to be a lot of things that you're going to have to kind of settle on not being right about, and that you have to make changes on, and things like that. So if you go and write and believe that everything that you write is going to be taken as is,
Yeah.
that is not necessarily true, and you're going to have to change and evolve yourself. Now, I'm
Yep.
not sure that everybody that writes would actually even be in that mindset.
No, a
Um,
lot of them are, Ida.
okay, yeah. So like I guess I always strive to be better.
Yeah.
And however I can be better, I will try and be. Like when I started being Mary Roe, I was fresh out of the box as an author of historical fiction. And I had written the story. I had a lot of things wrong there, and it was on a like a linear timeline. So today she did this, tomorrow she did this, the next day she did this. So it was very linear.
Yeah.
And when I had it finished, a lot like a lot of people loved it, but there was people said, oh, it was too nice, and too, everything was done right. So the next book, when I released The Promise, I was like, well, I'll change that. So I made sure that everything wasn't so nice, and I left it at a cliffhanger. But
Yeah.
then I had people throwing books at me and like stopping me on the trails and saying, what the hell did you do with that girl? And so I was like, okay, I better tone that down.
Yeah.
So then when I did The Liars, I didn't do a singular timeline then either. So what I did with that one is I chunked it up, and it was going back in time and just in their minds, but it was the same characters.
Sure.
So then when I evolved to The Liars, then I had two different lots of characters 100 years apart. So everything was an evolution for me with this series.
That makes a lot of sense. That makes a lot of sense. I find that there are two camps, of readers. There's readers who like want to be challenged and like are okay if like the plot takes a strange turn, or if a character they love, something bad happens to them, or they do something they don't like, or something like that. And then there's readers who just want a nice story. You know what I mean? Like they they want something that, so like there's always going to be that war between the two readers. Like, do I want to tell a nice story where everyone acts like they're supposed to and it's real nice, or do I want something morally ambiguous where it makes people think? You know what I mean?
But like authors could be like that as well, right?
Oh,
like
yeah.
For me as an author, I wanted to be more. I wanted to be more than just the nice story person.
Sure, for sure.
Right. So like it was part of my development as well.
Yeah. No, that makes sense. And you're right. A lot of authors do think, like I've met a lot of young authors who like think that their first draft is done. Like, oh, it's done. I'm like, nope, you've started. That's the end of the beginning kind of thing. And then when they've done a few drafts and they're happy with it, they think I'm done, and then they get really upset at any edits kind of thing. There's one, whenever I'm dealing with a young author, and I say something like, you need to remove this scene or that scene or something like that, and they say no, I ask them to justify it. And if there's a justification, then I'll do it. But so often the only justification is because that's the way I wrote it. And that's not good enough, because you could write it a million ways. You know what I mean?
Yes. And that's one of the things, like as an author, you must learn. You might have the nicest scene in Canada in your book, and your editor might say you have to get rid of that. So it's not like you have to get rid of it forever. So you can just take it and put it somewhere and introduce it in a different book in a different way.
Yeah, absolutely. 100%. That's wonderful. Thank you very much for that, Ida. Ida, what is the best money you ever spent as a writer?
For me, I think, and you might not like this, or you might really like it, has been classes with Matthew LeDrew, and I've gone on a couple of writing retreats with Gerard Collins, and I plan on going actually next fall with Gerard's team again on writing retreats. I think it's a good investment for an author to be with other writers.
Yep.
Either like online in Zoom or in person, which hopefully we'll be lucky enough to be next September.
Someday, yeah.
But it is like, I really enjoy that because it keeps me writing, it keeps me on track, and like I have a speculative fiction novel now, probably 30,000 words into it or more, because of my writing class.
Oh, wow.
Which I never would have even attempted, but it's always been an assignment, and then I kind of like, oh yeah, okay, I'll keep going.
Yeah.
So I really enjoy that, and I enjoy feedback. So like paying for a writing class or paying for a retreat, I think is the best money that I have ever spent as a writer.
Just getting to have that conversation with other writers, I find is helpful. Yeah, for sure.
Yes, and seeing
I'm glad
things.
you said two things, because I was going to be like, pick something else.
No, but it is like, it is when I joined your class, and like the first time I was there, to me, I'm not an author. Like I
no,
have
you
written no, but to me, I'm not, right?
Yeah.
Like I've written some books, and I'm very humble and grateful that people are picking up my books and reading my books. So like I don't see myself as an author. So anything that I can learn or grow on or anything else, like, to me, it's just wonderful.
Yeah. I'll also take a moment to point out, we both did Tracy Waddleton's class. She does them intermittently well. She's a wonderful author as well. Teaches a wonderful class. She did Send More Tourists. The last ones were delicious over at Breakwater Books, and she's up a way, so she teaches them over not Zoom, but something that's Zoom-like. If you ever hear about her offering them out there in the listening world, definitely take hers.
Yes, I enjoyed hers as well, and that was nice. And we actually had a meeting after the course with the writers, and we reviewed some of our own work, so that was really nice as well.
Awesome. Ida Young, have you ever experienced what I call over here the sophomore slump, where you write one book and it does okay, or people read it, and then you go to write the second one and it's like, holy crap, because the experience of having one published is so, it gets in your head, you know what I mean?
I can't say yes to that, because I haven't, I don't think I've experienced that. So now, thanks for naming it, because when I do, I'll say, oh, that's what Matthew was talking about.
If you haven't, you're not, it's only between that first and second one. That's why it's called the sophomore slump.
No. Well, like, I guess I wrote the memoir first. So I wrote my memoir first, and then I was kind of challenged, I guess, to write more books because somebody said it was a one-hit wonder, and I was like, no way. So I wrote the first one, which was Being Mary Roe.
Yeah.
So I don't know if that's the sophomore slump, or it's like a challenge, a read review challenge.
No, and I'm laughing, and you're looking at me laughing, you're wondering why. And I know what the memoir was about, and I'm sure most of the people listening will know, but just how silly it sounds out loud to say, I wrote my memoir first. It sounds like you were like you wrote the future, where you were like, oh, I've written 4 novels in the Being Mary Roe series, and like you wrote all that first, and then did the events.
Yeah, no, my first book was just like, it was, I guess it was a cleansing and a healing and a sensation all at one time.
Yeah, it was about some real life tragedies that had befallen you and your family, right?
Yeah, so our family, we had a fire in 1980, and I lost 5 siblings in the fire. So
Oh,
I wrote
geez.
about it 27 years later, and it was like I said, it was just a very healing experience.
That's
And it
horrible. No.
was like but it was sensational
Yeah.
in a way, because not only did you was there additional healing, but it was really good for our community, and it was good for people in general. I got at least, and I'm not I got at least 1,000 messages,
Oh, wow.
and I have a lot of them in a box, but I got about that many messages saying about how the book had helped people.
That's
So
incredible.
like that was to me, it was like a stunning event,
Yeah, big time.
you know.
Yeah, that one's over at it was over at Creative, and now it's over at Breakwater, right? Yeah, yeah,
Yes, yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
It's a good book. It's a good book. Um, Ida Linehan Young, have you ever considered writing under a pseudonym?
I actually have. That was a question that I put to some genre writing writer community members just recently, actually, because I'm doing my mom's book, which I will write under Ida Linehan Young, because that's what my memoir and my historical fiction series is under. But I'm thinking about, I have a couple of ideas, and one of them is speculative fiction, and
Yep.
the other is fantasy.
Oh, wow.
So I may write under a pseudonym, but it will be like I.F. Young or
Yeah,
something like
it
that.
won't be one of those things where like with Nora Roberts, where you're trying, or like J.K. Rowling, where you're trying to hide it. It's more like just a different
Just
brand.
for the readers, yeah, because like if I don't want to turn off readers of historical fiction if they pick up another novel by me and it's under my like they'll be like, oh my god, like what happened to her, sort of thing. But if somebody likes reading and likes reading my style, it would be close enough that they would know.
Yeah, yeah, that makes sense. That makes perfect sense, actually. Ida Linehan Young, what did you do with the first money you ever made from being an author? So whatever it was, whether it was for a short fiction or for your memoir or whatever, that first bit of money you got, what was the first thing you did with it?
You will not believe this, but the first thing I did was buy a heat pump for our house, because my mom was living here then, and she wasn't well, and she used to find it really hot or really cold. It would be one thing or the other. So I bought a heat pump so that she would be more comfortable.
Yeah, no, that's a lot of writers. It's very practical. It's very like the most luxurious thing I've heard yet. Actually, the luxurious stuff really comes from short fiction, because it's like it's one piece of money. Like some people usually like, oh, I got paid $1,000 and no more was coming. Like they're not getting paid for royalties or anything like that. So it's like, all right, well, let's go do one thing with this to celebrate, and then that's it. But when it's usually if the money's from a novel, it's something real. Like I paid rent, I got food. You know what I mean? Like, yeah.
Yeah. Well, my first novel money, I put it towards my trip for go and write. So I put it into, like, I kind of invested into myself.
Okay.
So I put it into my trip for the retreat.
Okay. Cool. Good. Thank you for that. Well, it's been wonderful having you on the line here, Ida. Everyone, check out The Stolen Ones from Ida Linehan Young. And tell you what, while you're at it, pick up The Liars from Ida Linehan Young and the whole Being Mary Roe series. Check out everything from her. She's a wonderful, wonderful treasure of a Newfoundland author. Thank you very much for coming, Ida.
Thanks for having me.
No worries.
All right, well, thanks for coming on again. For all of you, we'll be here again next week at 4:30 Newfoundland time or online at chmr.ca. Please tune in and we'll talk more about writing culture in Newfoundland.